Last week I wrote, quote, "I'm increasingly concerned about valuations," unquote. And yesterday I recorded the first episode in the risks to the economic path forward. And the episode was themed rose-colored glasses. And what I meant by that was that people tend at this stage of hopefulness tend to over-extrapolate small pieces of good news. They want to believe in a recovery that's going to be quick, that's going to be V-shaped. Well, today, the rose-colored glasses came off. So, number 2 risk in terms of the economic path forward is a biological setback. And today, the news was mainly driven by biological news. And frankly, the news is not particularly surprising to me, and certainly not to epidemiologists. We've been relaxing the lockdown. We've got much more mobility. People become overconfident, and I talked about this in risk number 1 episode. And they start essentially being less careful. And less careful means maybe not wearing a mask, maybe not keeping as much social distance. So things like that essentially increase the R factor, or the reproduction factor. And it's no surprise. Looking at the data, looking at the mobility data, it's no surprise that the infection rate, particularly in southern states, has gone up. And you can't just attribute that to increased testing, because the death rates have also gone well above the forecasted projections. So what does this mean? Well, you reassess this news, and it means that there's an increased probability that we have to impose distancing policies again to slow the economy. It means that there's a decreased probability of a V-shaped recovery. And all of this is, of course, negative news for asset valuations. So again, the second risk is this biological setback. And we saw a little bit of that today. But this risk is much deeper than the amount that you flatten a curve. So let me talk briefly about the components of this risk. So the components, of course, are all biological, and they're all focused on solutions. So number 1 is vaccine development. So this is much in the press, and we know there's a number of initiatives going on, and there are high expectations that we will have a solution on the vaccine front very early, even though a number of experts have warned that it might take longer. So for me, the vaccine, when it's deployed, is the so-called all clear. We can go back to normal. And the risk here is that the solution comes later rather than sooner. So the risk here is, instead of having a solution deployed in the first quarter of 21, it gets pushed forward into late 21. And that is a very significant risk for the economic path forward. Second, there are different classes of pharmacological solutions that are being pursued. And basically what these do, and think of this as antivirals, what these do is essentially reduce the risk of death and shorten the time that you're sick. Okay, so the risk here is that we don't make the progress that is expected. And the solutions that are offered on the pharmacological front are not as effective as we hoped. There's also another class of mitigation with antibody research, and there's a number of different strains of that research. And again, it's the same thing, that this will mitigate symptoms if you get sick and reduce the probability of death. So think of it another way, that this becomes like a regular flu, which we handle all the time. It's still dangerous, but it's not as deadly. So if there is research setbacks on that front, again, that poses a risk to the economic path forward. So my opinion is that I've got a fair degree of confidence, even though I'm not in the field. I'm more of a statistician. I've got a fair degree of confidence that we will have a vaccine. So if you look at what's happening on the vaccine front, there's over 100 vaccines being developed, and 10 of them are in trial already. So even if you believe that the success rate is only 15%, there are plenty of candidates, and something will likely work. So that's not the risk. Okay? So I believe that the risk is the time that we actually find the vaccine, not whether we will find the vaccine. So with high probability, we will have a vaccine. The question is, when will we have the vaccine? And on the pharmacological front, there's over 200 initiatives going on, and many in trial. So again, I believe that we will have something, and the two issues here, essentially how effective the mitigation will be. And number two, when will it be deployed? So those are the risks that I see. So again, this crisis is different from other crises. This recession, which I call the Great Compression, came on very quickly and can end quickly with a biological solution. The cause of this recession is biological. The antidote is also biological. However, the economic path forward is fragile. And again, the number two risk, I believe, is a biological setback.